Hey guys, welcome back. This is quite a surprise, let me tell you. I literally just made a video on Zeri a few weeks ago, and there's already another champion in testing who's scheduled for release probably on patch 12.4. From what I'm able to gather, both Renata and Zeri were supposed to come out last year, which explains why there was such a big gap between Vex and Zeri's release in 2021. Suffice to say, things are getting interesting for Season 12, whether it's for better or worse is yet to be discovered, so you guys can look forward to this series becoming a regular thing, I guess. So let's go through my first impressions on Renata Glasc, the Chem Baroness. Is she a perfectly designed champion or 200 years? Time to find out. But before we begin, because I know for a fact all you sweaty gamers don't like to cook, I'm gonna help you out with that through a nice little sponsor called HelloFresh. You probably heard of it before? It's a meal kit provider that sends you prepared ingredients needed for a meal alongside a recipe card that takes you roughly around 30 to 40 minutes per meal and is easy to follow. I actually order a lot of meal preps myself since I work out a lot, and this saves me a ton of hassle. It provides you with just enough portions per meal with easy cleanup, and for anyone conscious about unnecessary waste, HelloFresh actually cuts down on your food waste by about 25% compared to grocery shopping, and it's all fresh and sourced directly from farmers. If you go on their website, they have a menu that changes every week with a ton of different dishes you can think of, along with the estimated cook time, if it's spicy, vegetarian, etc. So you can customize your cart in any way you can think of. If you're interested in trying to eat better but are unsure as to what to make, give HelloFresh a try by heading over to the website and using my code POGVARS16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts across 6 boxes. Free shipping too. Gifts include free appetizers, desserts, and premium recipes to go along with your normal meals. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring the video, but for now, let's get back into it. Like Zeri, Renata hails from the land of Zaun, and I'm sure the very many of us who watched Arcane have the impression that Zaunites aren't exactly known for playing nice. Despite her rather heroic and bright personality, Zeri herself isn't above using tricks and underhanded tactics to ironically get the upper hand. She can steal shields from enemies and use them herself. Renata, on the other hand, is very unapologetic about being, how should I say, an asshole, pardon my French. She's blatantly a bad apple. Just by looking at her champion reveal trailer, we know that she'll probably crack open a cold one with Thresh before she does with Garen. As far as character design goes, 10 out of 10. Definitely embodies the shady, evil crime boss trope we would expect from a morally lenient place like Zaun. I never thought I'd see the day when there would be a more disrespectful walking animation than Ivern's. She's got the arrogance, the everyone is trash beneath me attitude, love it. I'm not one to ride on the anime character hate bandwagon as much as some others. I mean, I still wish we got a monster champion, but evil characters are nice too. At least Renata's appearance matches her daunting and cold personality. She's not a bubbly little girl talking smack to everyone. As you know, though, character design isn't my forte. I like to focus more on gameplay. So continuing on the trend of having a gimmick that entails addressing something rampant in the game or something missing, Renata's gimmick may be the most perplexing one of them all. Vex is the anti-mobility mage, designed to counter the increasing number of dashes and blinks. Zeri is the anti-shield marksman, designed to counter the increasing number of shields from both champions and items. Renata, on the other hand, is a support, a class largely divided into 3 categories: tank/engage supports, controllers, and carry supports. So far, they've enjoyed a period of relative stability, having solid personal agency for the past couple of years. Yet despite the inclusion of carry supports like Pyke and Senna, there's just one problem that hasn't been handled by any of the 3 groups. Supports are amplifiers, they can only be as strong as their team is. Tank supports like Nautilus and Blitzcrank are only intimidating if their teammates are strong enough to capitalize. Enchanters like Yuumi and Soraka are only a problem if they can augment their allies to a level the opposing team is unable to handle. Even carry supports like Pyke, Zyra, and Senna can only succeed if they have the backing of their top jungle, mid, and bot. When behind, not so much. The entire support class effectively struggles to perform if the enemy team carries a bigger stick than they do. In other words, supports are missing an anti-carry. One of the most popular videos on my channel is on anti-carries, champions who pressure a game not by carrying a big gun themselves, but by disarming their opponent's gun. Shaco, Malzahar, Mordekaiser, Pantheon, and Rammus, to name a few, are able to shut down enemy carries at a disproportionate level. The latter group has to be far stronger in items and levels to overpower their respective anti-carries in most cases. As for Renata, she might be the first true anti-carry support in League of Legends, which can change the dynamic of bot lane forever as we know it. By the way, just want to give a quick shout out to Fandom for getting her abilities and numbers out so fast. I'm writing this script the day after she was teased, and they already have almost every detail on her abilities, so thanks so much for that. Designing an anti-carry support is not an easy task. Your main goal is to stop the enemy carries from doing anything, but you're still a support first and foremost. You need to be able to assist your own team as well. Renata's passive is Leverage, a very rudimentary one, which is pretty uncommon in this day and age. She marks an enemy for 6 seconds and deals bonus max health magic damage if they were unmarked. If an ally champion damages the same marked champion, it will consume it to inflict additional max health magic damage. At the moment, the wiki doesn't say there's an on-target cooldown, so assuming she and someone else alternates attacks, they have a very persistent way of doing percent health damage. That might be a potential red flag for game balance. Consistent max health damage on such an easy condition is not something you should dole out lightly. I'm pleased with how they worded it though. Due to her passive, she's exclusively a support, as it would be practically useless in solo lane. Handshake is where things get really fun. Renata's Q throws a hook in a straight line that damages and roots the first enemy hit, during which she can then recast the ability again to knock the target in a set direction, dealing the same damage to enemies they pass through and stunning them for half a second if they smash into a champion. This ability is awesome. We've only ever had very straightforward hook type abilities that get you closer to the caster. Blitz, Pike, Thresh, Nautilus, Silas, each of their hooks do more or less the same thing. But Renata's handshake can toss you closer to her, farther away from her, or swing you to the right or left. The amount of ways you can use this attack can make all the difference in winning or losing a fight. I love it. It is hands down my favorite ability in her kit. I'm actually surprised it took Riot this long to make a support who can forcibly reposition enemies remotely. The only other one that comes to mind is Talia's Seismic Shove. Mordekaiser isn't really the same because in the end you can't direct it perpendicular. Unfortunately, the compliments don't transfer over to the next ability. Renata's W is Bailout. For 5 seconds, she grants ramping attack and movement speed to herself or an allied champion. The latter stat only applies when walking towards champions or minions. The buff duration refreshes whenever the target scores a takedown against an enemy champion. In perfect conditions, this buff can last up to 30 seconds, which actually allows you to have her W on up to 2 people at a time, maybe even 3 with sufficient cooldown reduction. The ability would be perfectly fine if it stopped right then and there, but it keeps going. If the target takes fatal damage while Bailout is active, they instantly go back to full health with rapidly decaying HP, dying for reals if it hits 0 again. Based on the speed of decay, they can only live for about 2 to 3 seconds maximum. If they score a takedown against an enemy champion though, the dot damage goes away and they survive with their lives intact. They have to be doing this on purpose. I mean, come on. You took away Aatrox's revive for being too overpowered, then start giving it to everyone else. That's just cold, Riot. Back on topic, I get that you have only like 2 to 3 seconds max to cheat death, but I'll say this time and time again. A lot can happen in 2 to 3 seconds. A Morgana Q is a 3-second root. That's how long 3 seconds is in League. As far as this being an ability fit for an anti-carry, I can see how they thought it would be, but it ultimately failed. In its defense, it makes perfect sense why Bailout exists the way it does. For those who haven't watched Arcane, the drug Shimmer greatly amplifies your physical abilities for a short period of time, allowing you to tolerate unimaginable amounts of pain and damage during that time. So the death resistance isn't too outlandish in a thematic sense, but why does it save you? I don't want to spoil too much of Arcane, but Shimmer is a highly dangerous and corrosive drug. It eats away at your body, causing progressive degeneration of your skin and muscle tissue. Overuse of it leads to permanent physical deformities such as tumors. This is all conjecture as Renata has yet to be released to live servers, but allowing you to save yourself from death is not only an extreme offense to game balance, but an incorrect interpretation of the source material it was referenced from. Bailout as an ability can potentially break the rules of the game. We just removed Chemdrake for this very reason. Yes, it was mostly for the map and not the soul, but it was still included. I understand that unlike Chemtech's Soul's unconditional revive, there's a lot of conditions behind this, and it's not just a get out of jail free card. It doesn't have a stasis period. The champion is fully vulnerable the entire time. So if you theoretically have enough damage to kill your target twice over, it makes no difference. But it's not an anti-carry ability, it's a snowball ability. This doesn't make you survive burst damage that much better than a standard heal or shield. What it does allow you to do is amplify someone's combat ability much further. Assassins and divers usually have more than enough damage to kill a squishy ADC or mage 3 times in a single rotation, let alone once. If hypothetically you flipped it around and gave it to someone who can 1v9, that makes it so much easier for them to do so. There was an attempt at creating an anti-carry buff, it just missed the mark, by like a lot. Okay, I'm gonna stop there for now and go over it later since I want to finish the rest of her kit, which is thankfully a lot more digestible. Loyalty Program is a skill shot that shields allies while damaging and slowing enemies on the way, so it's a lot like Nami's Ebb and Flow, healing allies and damaging enemies. Very simple ability, nothing that significant otherwise. As for her ultimate, we have Hostile Takeover, which conjures a massive wave of chemicals in a straight line, causing all enemy champions and minions hit to go berserk. Berserk is a new form of crowd control introduced alongside Renata and is a lot like the Berserk status you see in other games. You get bonus attack speed and increased size, but indiscriminately attack anything within sight regardless of whether they're friend or foe. It's a more advanced taunt if you want to think about it that way. Okay, this kind of bothers me a lot. In true controller support fashion, Renata's ultimate is a massive skill shot that inflicts crowd control. Sona, Nami, Yumi, Seraphine, Renata. You know, right, you can make big teamfight ultimates on enchanters come in the form of other skill shots, right? Like it doesn't just have to be a straight line. Anyways, besides Bailout, Hostile Takeover is your second anti-carry ability. Vandal wasted no time showing you the fun things it can pull off, so instead of me explaining what can happen, I'll let you see what's happening on screen. This, in my opinion, is a much healthier way to make an anti-carry ability. If the enemy team has very high auto-attack damage such as Viego, Master Yi, Tryndamere, Vayne, etc., this can easily win you a fight when timed correctly. The ability lasts only 2.25 seconds at max rank, but for most carries that's a good 4 to 5 auto-attacks, not something you can take lightly. 3 of Renata's abilities place an emphasis on control, punishing enemies for mispositioning or straight up forcing them to misposition. Handshake lets her shift around opponents in a number of ways. You can force the enemy Cho'Gath or Scion in between your set and the enemy backline so he can football him for massive damage. You can pull the enemy Tryndamere close to his Lulu and toss out your ultimate to let him do all the work. Her Q is a fantastic ability that can set her up for easy combos with her E and ultimate. If we cast aside the egregious balance implications with Bailout, Renata's immense area control and lockdown can set her team up for cool comebacks, which does play into the fantasy of a support anti-carry. Should the enemy Rengar recklessly jump in to one-shot your ADC, you can juice them up with Shimmer, then use Handshake to prevent Rengar from escaping, thus allowing your ADC to kill them quickly in return. Renata's gameplay philosophy was handled extremely well. Unlike Akshan's, whose revive mechanic has no place being in there, the rationale behind Bailout does exist and is almost convincing enough to allow it to, but I just can't in good conscience say it's a well-designed ability. Yes, it's not a guarantee, and whoever revives will likely instantly die again. We have yet to see her performance in practice. For all we know, this will only make a difference in 1 out of every 30 games. But there are so many other ways you can design an anti-burst element besides cheating death. In fairness, I might be overestimating the significance of this, I won't deny that. I had a few viewers who experimented with her on the PvE, and they brought up a few things that aren't as explicit. So I'm fully aware that my first impressions of her are premature. That being said, I still stand by the notion that Renata's design as an anti-carry controller fell just short. To what extent, we don't know yet. For me, if I was trying to find a way to replicate Shimmer's effects in the actual game that can fit in the context of an anti-carry skill, it can come in the form of a comeback mechanic type buff. So like the more damage you take, the more damage you dish out in return, like Set's Haymaker for instance. Hostile Takeover is at its most threatening if the enemy team has very high damage. It won't really do anything if you use it on like a Maokai since his auto attacks do very little damage. I'd be curious to see if you use Bailout as a counterpunch buff instead. For example, on top of the bonus attack and movement speed, you gain damage reduction that increases based on your missing health. For the sake of argument, we can say 0% at full HP and caps out at 40 if you're at 30% HP or lower. After like a 2-second delay, the damage reduction disappears and converts to bonus damage. So if you had like 35% damage reduction, you would do 35% more damage. Meaning, if you were able to survive the burst damage thrown your way, you can turn the pressure around right back. Something like that might make Bailout more functional as an anti-carry buff than a snowball buff, which is how I see its revive mechanic now. It doesn't make a squishy ADC that much tankier, but it will certainly boost a fed 1v9's champion's ability to 1v9 even more. At the very least, with the damage reduction turn damage bonus, there's a way for you to survive incoming fire just enough to launch a counteroffensive. Anyways, there's a lot of murky water with this one that I have yet to see, but that's sort of the point of our first impressions video, what my first impressions of a champion are. Credit where credit is due, I'm excited to see Renata's other abilities. Handshake will take several hundreds of games to fully master, and I actually think Hostile Takeover is a fantastic ultimate barring the somewhat lazy way it's applied. You know, instead of a straight line skill shot, it would be interesting to see it come in the form of a grenade, but that's a nitpick over anything else. We've been in a very high damage meta for a long time now. You may have noticed the growing number of games where it's 5 damage versus 5 damage, and so far, there hasn't been a champion who punishes an enemy team for having too much damage. Now we do. The Berserk status effect might make players think twice about being too reckless in a teamfight. After all, imagine a team with Tryndamere top, Kindred jungle, Corki mid, Jinx bot, and Senna support. A single Hostile Takeover will just be an easy pentakill for Renata. As someone who really hates the current damage meta, I can't wait to see that happen. All in all, there's a lot that I, and by extension many of us, don't know about her. This episode will likely come out before her actual live release, unlike Vex and Zeri's, which already came out after they've been released. I'm also writing this the day after she was teased, so this might be the most precipitous review of a champion I've done probably in my entire career. For the time being, I'm gonna hold off on any judgments in regards to Bailout. Time will tell if the cheating death mechanic will break the game. I'm leaning towards the side that says it will, but even if it doesn't, I dislike that it's not exactly an accurate representation of what Shimmer is supposed to be. Games don't need to be narratively consistent with its lore or source material if it detracts from balance. By that logic, Vhagar would be the most powerful being in existence, seeing as he can materialize event horizons, which are black holes. But then again, Shimmer can easily be modeled into League of Legends. It's a basic performance enhancer type drug. Gives you more power, more speed, more endurance, but eats away at your body. They could have incorporated that into an AD carry champion for sure. All things considered, Renata is pretty neat. I'm really excited to see what players will be able to pull off with her. I'll give her a tentative 7 out of 10, just like Zeri. It's just bailout. If it was designed a little bit better, she might be like a 9 out of 10. But I have to see it for myself. Appearance-wise, 100% 10 out of 10. I love her design. She's like a mixture of Urgot and Camille with a little bit of Singed, and she got the threads. What do you guys think about Renata? I feel like the support mains will thoroughly relish being able to shut down all those pesky assassins in 1v9 champs. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter, joining my Discord server, and checking out my previous episodes on Vex and Zeri if you haven't yet. But until next time, thank you all so much for watching, and let's hope her bailout isn't as broken as it sounds. Take care, guys.